Well, seeing no other public testimony, I will close the public testimony, and I'm happy to hear from the commissioners.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, but, and to avoid having a debate in this club, I do appreciate the observation. I guess I would go the opposite way, where she had observed it was an attack on R8. I guess I could see the concern about the Marinick family, about the R1, where there's kind of an R1, there is just it's more suburban in feel, and when you walk through the streets and drive through it, versus R8, it already kind of is close quarters in Camden, Fells Point, those neighborhoods. So the difference between a 10-foot backyard and no backyard seems less impactful to the built environment to me. And I'm a row home guy who's lived in the waterfront homes most of my time here. That's just my observation. But I think ultimately, for conversation, I think this ultimately is arbitrary. This sort of is a political decision. I think this is, I'm familiar with what was driving this is the zoning board's change, and it's sort of the council members are closest to this, getting the concerns of their constituents about what they've been denied from doing at the zoning board. And I think by and large it really has been the homeowners who have been denied because it's a rural home is not unique and you can't make a justification as much. So for that reason, it's sort of ultimately arbitrary. But I'm comfortable with this. But
Would you like to make a motion to?
Well, I don't want to stifle debate, but we keep going, so I'll move to accept.
We're not going to stifle debate if you make a motion.
I'll move to accept the staff report and staff recommendation.
They're including, I think, we want to include, for the purpose of a motion, 2 technical corrections. Right? Yes, sir? Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Is there a second on that motion, which we will debate? Second. Yeah, second from the councilman. All right. So the motion been made to accept the staff report with 2 technical amendments. Discussion. Anyway. We can just go around, but I'm calling on you is not going to help if you have nothing to say. Mr. Vice Chair, do you want to say anything? Okay, Mr. Councilman.
I'll just say I appreciate the robust conversation. I think my position is still where it's been, so thank you.
Okay. Commissioner. You made a motion, so
Just some comments.
please.
Okay. This is another one of those bills with best intentions, right? That's why it's been drafted, because we're trying to solve some problems. My problem, though, is that its justification is convenience and expediency. We want to make things easier for homeowners in order to move forward with amendments, changes to their homes, or, yeah, I think that's, mostly we're dealing with existing structures. Although new structures will also fall under these more liberal requirements. My issue is, it's kind of, I'm a one-issue guy on this one. And that is the climate action plan, multiple comprehensive plans, the green network plan. As far as I've been involved with the department, which goes back to 2000, there's never been a discussion about reducing open space. In fact, it's so contrary to every single policy that this city's passed for 20 years. I can't believe that we're saying, well, we're gonna do this because we want to help people out a little bit. Now, I have to say, I mean, I live in a community that has very strict mass and bulk standards. And I can tell you, I fought these side yard setback requirements, feeling very justified that they were too strict. I actually think leniency on some of these setbacks makes sense. But I just can't, the chart up there is a little bit disingenuous because of how Baltimore evaluates lot coverage. The building footprint is impervious. The allowable impervious area is impervious. Under this math, we're talking about 90%, 97% of a lot being covered with structures or paving. Great, 3%, that's great in a world where we have ever increasing storms, we have flooding problems, we have infrastructure that's failing. So my own opinion is, I just don't think it's responsible. I think it's contrary to what we've been about in terms of the environment for 25 years here in the city. And so that's just like, I would never be able to improve or to support the additional lot coverage.
Well,
So that's, thank you.
well, I mean, is that your only?
That's my only concern, because I do think there's a value to helping people. I can't tell you how many times I've done an addition and it needed to be another foot wider to fit a kitchen counter or a powder room. And I think that most homeowners would appreciate that kind of adaptability and flexibility. But God, we can't. This city, we'll never get it back. Once it's paved, once it's built, it's gone. Say goodbye to it. And I don't think that's gonna be such a problem in our R1 through R4 neighborhoods. We're covered, we got protections, we've got covenants. The real impact is on the people that don't have those benefits. So if you wanna vote for that and harm people are at least protected in that regard, I please do. It's your responsibility as commissioners, but I can't go there.
Here's my concern with that, Commissioner McCoach. And I'm a little bit conflicted, but as you described, at the different ends of the spectrum, our R1 and our R8 communities are affected differently. And so, and it's true that our R8 neighborhoods, they're already built, they're already paved, they're already impervious. And so, to me, it has the impact there is, to me, not as big as people are making it out to be, because these are already built out areas. Now, when we go to the other end of the spectrum, the R1s of the world, their concern is different, and I understand it, but these are folks arguing that a 10-foot setback or a 5-foot setback is insufficient when there's 0-foot setback in my neighborhood, and that's fine there. And the idea that we just shouldn't cover up any more land in the city for environmental reasons is just not consistent with our goals to grow the city. And so I think, it's also important to take into consideration that if this bill passes, that land does not all get covered, in one day or 1 year. These are, options. And I agree that we need to do, more as a city to mitigate climate and stormwater runoff. But we need to do more to mitigate that, not just count on, a postage stamp in a row house back lot that, isn't getting mowed. Some other things I didn't bring up last time in the hearing. I mentioned a little bit how these green areas can sometimes be nuisances. Another thing that we have a major problem with in our denser neighborhoods is mosquitoes. And this is where they come from, these small, spaces that collect water. So.
Can I ask a question about your comment? So certainly the intent of this is not to address permeability. It's to address the building envelope.
Yes.
I mean, I experienced in Highlandtown, and it's probably got a 30-foot setback already, maybe 40, and every yard is paved. So I'm wondering if we're not mixing apples and oranges here, trying to address a permeability issue with a bulk regulation.
I think you're getting back to the code enforcement issue, Mr. Director.
Or maybe a design manual issue, kind of wrestling with that.
Well, in my head, I was thinking kind of the chair's point about the market deciding, because I'm looking at like the new NVR home was going for $800,000+, and they have options, and they've chosen not to have a green space in their backyards because the market dictates, and they, obviously the builders would be sensitive to what the market desires at a high price point, and even they decided to do total lot coverage and impervious surface. Another point, I guess, to counter, I respect your opinion, so I do want to support it, or I want to hear it out, but thinking to what you said, Vice Chair, that even if it's grassy or dirt, it could be just as much runoff as a concrete, because there's no guarantee, and so that's not, we wouldn't guarantee that in our zoning, so.
Okay. Well, I think.
Yeah, there, just one quickly, I won't ramble on this one, in response to concerns about property values. I don't think that there's any evidence that a slight reduction in your neighbor's setback reduces your property value. In fact, I would suggest that increasing the square foot, or even the potential or right to increase the square footage of your property, would increase your property value. And even if your neighbor were to do so, their increased value would probably have a positive impact. So, you know, it's a complicated issue. There are a lot of issues to consider. I just want to keep us focused on the facts.
Thank you for saying that. I meant that to myself, that same as that point where, I mean, I guess I maybe was speaking a little loosely, saying that was the only motivation, was like make it easier to build, but I think that's what was the motivation to change the tables, was that people were getting denied, and so people were mostly in R1 districts, like Councilman Schleifer's districts. He calls me all the time because he was mad that his constituents could not expand, like he said, for a foot or two, and so.
That's why we have a zoning, we have hearings, we have conditions, we have many tools to accommodate people, without going in a direction that cannot be turned back. That's
Okay.
my point. But everybody's got a different set of values, right? So if it's, you guys, you know, so that's
I
why
think
we have a commission.
my mic is dead, and but that's how long we've been here. But I'll just say, in all candor, I don't necessarily speak for Councilman Schleifer, nor do we share the same priorities in many cases. But what I will say is one of the challenges that he and his constituents have run up against is that when they do go before the BMZA, then the question becomes uniqueness, and then they can't really make an argument about that property being unique, and so they wind up getting denied, which then leads us to this process we deal with now.
Okay, I think the time has come. I don't want to cut anybody off, so if you feel really strongly that you want to say something else, I certainly will respect that. Anybody? If not, we're just going to take a vote. Mr. Executive Secretary, would you call the roll, please, on this item?
Robin Allen is gone. Okay. John Bullock. Approved. Christine Griffin.
Approved.
Doug McCoach.
Disapprove.
Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson. And John Lario.
Approved. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next and final item.